Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Alien Astrobiology Lessons for an Interdisciplinary Education Network. We're so happy that you're listening. And today I'm going to be interviewing somebody who is just so cool in so many ways. Her name is KJ. She's a passionate scientist who believes that the more one learns, the more there is to discover. This sense of curiosity has inspired her to pursue a Ph.D. in animal behavior after earning her bachelor's in ecology and evolutionary biology. Her research focuses on understanding how urban stressors impact urban spider generalists. She is deeply committed to the field of urban ecology and views arthropods as an understudied yet abundant biological avenue through which we can observe how human activities shape the environment and, in turn, the organisms that inhabit it. So, thank you so much for joining us, KJ.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, to start, I kind of wanted to just ask if you could give us an overview of your research, maybe a little bit more about why you got into this field.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I'm kind of an urban ecologist through and through. My system, or I guess my study system, really focuses on spiders. I work with black widows and jumping spiders. And I guess like my scientific goal is to try and look at the cool ways that spiders mitigate the stress that we cause as humans through different anthropogenic pollutants like sound, light, chemical pollutants, and how exactly they do so well cohabitating with us.
That is so cool. Yeah, there's a lot that we as humans put out into the environment, and I don't think we really tend to realize how deeply it can affect all sorts of creatures, including like the smallest that we might not really think about. Um, would you be able to kind of expand on the whole Allen artificial light stuff? Because I think that stuff is
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is my pleasure. So I love artificial light at night. Really bad for the environment, but a very interesting, how do we say, like call to action or I guess study. So basically, artificial light at night is kind of negative for a lot of organisms because of the fact that it just is very disruptive for environmental timing as well as kind of like our predetermined circadian rhythms. And so we use these like natural rhythmics to gauge like what time we should be awake, what time we should be active, what we should be doing during these periods. And artificial light at night has lengthened the amount of time that we're awake at night. And also, it disrupts the environment around us. So, animals that use light as guides or animals that use light kind of like, for example, like birds in migration, they ask you to turn off your lights so they don't get lost. So there's different things like that, or even moths that decide to cluster around lanterns. It can be very detrimental to the environment at large. So I currently am kind of studying how artificial light at night affects arachnids because they have shown that it is detrimental. Previous a previous PhD student actually, Nick Wilmot, very cool. He did a study showing that spider brains are actually smaller when they develop under Allen, artificial light at night. But there has been studies that have shown that spiders like jumping spiders with really good vision are actually able to see during those Allen periods and thus continue foraging.
Interesting. So sort of like a almost like selective advantage for those individuals, maybe.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of like feeding into another adjacent topic is again, like these creatures are maybe organisms that kind of the majority of people might not really think about as studied organisms and more like just, you know, things to kind of like be afraid of. And, it's very
Yeah.
instinctual to be afraid of spiders. Um, but when you work with an animal that many people see as scary or unappealing, like how has this changed your perception of organisms in general?
Yeah, so I was initially actually scared of like all arthropods for the most part. Even yeah, like bugs, I didn't really like spiders. I thought that they were spooky. But I think after working with them, I've just kind of understood that there is a mutual respect that there must be with like people and animals in the environment. And those spiders or insects look scary. They're still animals too, and they're doing their best to kind of live in the environment that we've created around them. But they're not creatures that are out to get you or not inherently dangerous. You just have to be, like I said, respectful in the way that you handle them and the way that you interact with them as different animals. But I think I've earned a lot of appreciation through becoming like an arachnologist or an entomologist, simply because of the fact that I interact with these animals so much and I see the amazing things that they do to kind of like mitigate the stress that we put on them or even just to exist.
Yeah, that's the idea of that respect that you have
Mhm.
toward them is really cool. And I think like that's something we can carry into sort of this idea of astrobiology, which is all about the search for extraterrestrial life and sort of like if we did, make contact, what would that be like? Or what are we even looking for? How do we know what we're looking for? Um, and I think in a couple of these episodes, we sort of touched on the idea that like it's like very, very plausible that we would totally disrespect whatever organisms we maybe
Yeah.
would come in contact with because we could see them as like, um, just they're obviously going to be very different. I
Mhm.
really think it's very unlikely they would be, you know, at all similar to us.
Yeah.
But there's so many like assumptions that we could make, and our perception is skewed as
Mhm.
like a species that has evolved in a very particular way with a particular set of environmental conditions. And
Mhm.
so, like, coming across something that we might not understand at all, or we might be feeling afraid of, or, you're like, oh, like that's a gross animal. Like, we're just
Yeah.
gonna, be scared and like predict that maybe they're gonna be confrontational with us, or we're not going to try to bridge any gaps or anything like that. So, like,
Mhm.
talking about spiders is really cool because I know that like before pretty much like before I met you, I was just like so scared of spiders and
Oh.
didn't really see them as like,
Mhm.
the cute and very cool organisms that they are. I am still like
Mhm.
afraid when I see a spider, but I appreciate them a lot more now. And if anybody listening wants to see like a super cute spider, look up like a jumping spider. Those things are so cute.
Super cute. And I think fear is good because it's part of like the mutual respect system, like they're scared of us in the same way that we're scared of them. And that's a really important part about like respecting the balance between the distance that we keep with them, if that makes sense, or the way we interact with them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Interestingly enough, there's like taking this to like another level. There's like a theory in astrobiology called the dark forest theory, which
Mhm.
is like there are advanced civilizations that are out there, but we just haven't come in contact with them yet because they're afraid, so they're kind of like keeping their existence um
Mm.
like hidden because like there could be like so many different civilizations out there, but the forest is dark. We can't see each
Mhm.
other, we can't contact each other because everybody's like, if I put my existence out there, somebody could attack me. So that's kind of interesting too, like a mutual fear type thing.
In a lot of organisms, and I could definitely see that being a thing in astrobiology because it's like, oh, okay, like, and you have to hope that that other organism shows like that mutual respect, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's something that is very prevalent in biology too, because humans don't really have that sort of like, I guess, like fear or respect because they're kind of like, well, I can do whatever I want, I'm human.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we kind of like view ourselves as like the top or the pinnacle or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
interesting. I like that. Um, Another question is like from all of your observation and research, like what are the like evolutionary advantages, environmental advantages of like being a spider?
Oh, dude, there's so many.
Yeah.
I think spiders are amazing simply because they are so diverse. Like I like to say there's a spider for everything. There are spiders that prefer to spend their time like on water. There are spiders that prefer to be arboreal. Some live in leaf litter. They come in a variety of sizes. They have a variety of functionality with like their body plans. They're honestly amazing creatures. I'm trying to think of things in specific I think are really cool. I think they're very tactile, which is super cool. The the way that they hear acoustics is very fine. I think that that is amazing, and I think that sensory systems that humans don't quite understand are always super cool. The way that we feel vibrations will never be the same as them, so we completely overlook that tactile area when we're thinking about researching them because humans rely very heavily on like vision, and of course we have touch, but it's in a completely different capacity. So I think spiders are very unique in their approach to existing. Like you have spiders that have very active foraging where they're like bum rushing different animals, or we have spiders that have like these intricate webs, which is something that I think is very rare in the animal kingdom, you know? They spend their entire life weaving these webs. They're very, how do I say, like energy heavy. They expend a lot of energy doing it, and they'll spend their entire life there. They'll have babies on these webs. They catch prey with these webs, and I think it's honestly a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah. And like as like an outsider to this topic, am just like, think spider, think web. But it's also interesting to just hear you say like, you know, like you're narrowing it down when you talk about webs. Like there's so much more,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Mhm.
So that is so cool. Yeah, I feel like the vibrational stuff is just so fascinating. I mean, we see it in like pop culture depictions of spiders all the time. Is like their whole
Yes.
thing is that they can sense vibrations. So
Yeah.
if
Mhm.
you're caught in a web of some sort of spider-like creature, you're done
Yeah,
for.
it's like stay still. Yeah.
Like it's Halloween season, so I'll reference Coraline, but
Yeah, yeah, no, perfect. Exactly.
yeah. Um, and like that is also, just an example of us sort of like uh being super afraid of them. But it's also just at a like it's just cool at like a positive level. It's
Mhm.
like these organisms have developed such finely tuned methods of like catching their prey and just like being really good predators. There's also
They're
like
really
yeah, do you know about that one spider that like shoots a web and like Spider-Man style?
hunters because those are really cool. Like they like spit
Okay.
web at their target.
Yeah, I think that might be what I'm talking about. I saw like a video of one of those and it was like, wait, can you repeat the name of it real quick?
Yeah, yeah, they're called spitting spiders.
Spinning spiders. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, so if
Yeah.
anybody wants to see that, look that up because
Yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of really cool like there's a net casting spider also, which is really cool. They like weave a net and then they hold on to it until they see prey and then they kind of like cast it out.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow, okay, so lots of evolutionary tracks. Um, Speaking of which, do you have any like we could go with broad strokes first, then narrow down or whatever you want, but any ideas about how, obviously the environment will shape how organisms evolve in a physiological sense. Any insights on that?
Yeah, I think spiders are actually a really great system for that. Only because they're like smack dab in the middle of kind of like the trophic cascade, because they're great like meso predators for other arthropods. So when you're thinking like crickets, ants, roaches, a lot of people actually leave spiders alone in their house because you know, um, they work perfectly for pest control. But they're also eaten by a lot of lizards, birds, small mammals, things like that. So I think that they can actually be really good systems to not only track like physiological change of like the individuals themselves or even the species, but what exactly causes those changes, if that makes sense, and how exactly those changes affect the trophic skate around them. I think that's why the whole urban draw is so interesting to me because I think you can. really see those changes kind of displayed in spiders and the way that they interact with like the urban environment and the other insects that they come across. I think that it's like the perfect, I don't know, I think it's the perfect system to actually study like the changes that happen across their lineage because they have a high turnover rate, of course. They pop out generations like no other. So yeah, so you might actually see, how do I say, changes within, or yeah, changes within your lifespan on like a species physiology to adapt to like a certain environment. So maybe like, eyes that are more receptive or less receptive towards light, or longer legs, or maybe like different pedipalps. Yeah. So I,
Wow.
I think they're super cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think I was at some sort of, yeah, KJ and I went to an animal behavior conference over
Really
the summer.
fun.
It was super fun. And one of the talks I went to was like he was talking about like it was like a spider race. It was like, okay, we have this type of spider and this type of spider, and we're gonna see like which one can go faster, but we're gonna kind of like see if like longer legs is better or a larger body in general is better, I think was the idea. I'm probably butchering that explanation. Um, but that was cool because like you can have a very tiny little like like body and like these really long legs, or you
Yes.
can,
Yeah.
or you can have like a larger
Mhm.
body with like shorter legs. Is there anything you can speak to on that? I just thought that was kind of cool. Like anything you've
Oh
experienced.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, usually in a lot of species, you'll notice males with incredibly long legs simply because of the mating systems that they have kind of like evolved. For example, like widows that I work with, the males have small bodies because once they have reached maturity, they don't actually spend their time foraging anymore. They primarily stop eating and they spend a lot of their time actually looking for females, and they use those long arms to prop her up so they can actually like, yeah, pack her with their spermatophore. So there's a lot of really interesting dynamics with like legs and spiders. Um, I'm trying to think anything else that I think is very cool. And then you have, of course, like spiders that use like their legs for hunting, or they use that like wingspan. Like, for example, fishing spiders have very long legs, and it helps them kind of stay flat on the water, if that makes sense. And it's also part of their cannibalist mating system where they have to hold the female up yet again. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sort of sexual dimorphism, which is where you have like the same species, but the sexes like exhibit different phenotypes, different
Mhm.
um like it could be like behaviorally or it could be like, physiologically, like we're talking about the legs
Yes.
and stuff. Um
Yeah.
and all of this is just so interesting when you kind of think about what could be out there in terms of life.
Mhm.
Like what, and then if you sort of try to engineer like, oh, this is what, an alien could look like.
Mhm.
We're gonna have like some of the evolutionary advantages of spiders and then of a completely different organism, and then we're gonna add another, and just kind of see like what would this like evolved creature be like. And you can do that thought experiment and that simulation like an infinite number of times and always come up with something different. That's the cool thing
Yeah.
about evolution, right?
Mhm. I
Like,
agree, yeah. And you never know what's going to cause another node, which is always fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, like, I often just sort of have this thought where I'm just like, oh my God, like, I'm alive and like, I'm like a being here at this time in this place. Like,
Clear.
the
Yeah.
number of events that, occurred for that to be the case is like
Hmm.
so like interesting to me. And one of the things that I think um like we talked about in this astrobiology course that I took last year was like, well, let's go back and look at, evolution and which things went extinct and which things like came up and like radiated out. And it's like easily like this could be due to chance. Like this other thing could have,
Yeah.
kind of, uh
Hmm.
strong-armed its way up the evolutionary path. And of course, like evolution is very much like you can logically, figure out why this thing sort of, happened. But
Yeah.
Um, but there is a lot of oh my gosh, like I can't believe that happened instead of that. And like
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
where if we do try to just think about aliens and think of them as like, oh, they're gonna be humanoid or they're gonna be like us or like an organism we know of,
Hmm.
that's likely very folly because there's just so
Yeah,
many
and it's
paths.
exactly like, yeah, like you're saying, it's very environmental based because they're not going to have the same adaptations as us if they're living in a completely different environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the environment is like such a key thing. Alrighty, well, I think that was pretty much all I had for you, KJ. I really, really appreciate you coming on here. This
Yeah,
is
for
really
sure.
fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and a treat, always.